I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Watchung Borough Board of Education on July 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Change this. Okay. Welcome to a meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that the advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung at which formal action may be taken. This meeting is being conducted remotely using communication technology with an option to attend in person. Instructions for joining the meeting and participating in public comments have been posted on the district website and sent to the Watchung Borough and the Watchung Public Library, as well as to the school community through an email blast. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda at points in the meeting provided for the public to address the board. Members of the public also have been given the option to submit public comments to the board secretary via email or written letter no later than 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Individuals submitting comments via email or written letter must state their names and addresses. Recording or photographing other than for private personal use requires the consent of parents/guardians whose children may be included in the image. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barbella?
Here.
Mr. Beccarelli?
Here.
Mrs. Harvey?
Here.
Mrs. Ingracia? Mr. Kraft?
Here.
Mr. McDonald?
Here.
Mrs. Murad?
Here.
Mrs. Posehn?
Here.
Mrs. Scharf?
Here.
Okay, we have 8 members present.
Okay, can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Mr. Pepe, can you please read the reason why we're going into executive session?
Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-11, permits the Board of Education to meet in closed session to discuss certain matters. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Education adjourns to closed session to discuss 1, a matter rendered confidential by federal or state law, student matters, and a collective bargaining agreement and/or negotiations related to it. Be it further resolved, the minutes of this closed session be made public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. This closed session may be followed by an open session where action may be taken.
Okay. Can I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to move on to board member comments. Are there any comments from the board? Okay, then we're going to move on to superintendent remarks.
Thank you, Mrs. Harvey. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying summer. Our summer programs here in the schools are going very smoothly. We did receive the state guidance at the end of June, the updated CDC recommendations in early July, and the most recent recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics this week. Based on the guidance And in consultation with our local health official, we are optimistic that we can relax certain practices, such as the daily screening form and the requirement of sending public notices each time there is a positive test result in our school community. We do intend to have full days of school and to have lunch periods, as we did at Bayberry in the spring. We'll continue to take the safety protocol seriously and practice social distancing to the extent practicable. At the same time, we're paying close attention to the evolving circumstances with the pandemic and the growing concern about the Delta variant. Everyone wants to know about mask wearing in the fall, and that's understandable. We have not made a decision yet, and we will continue to work closely with our local health officials and consult with other districts. We were hopeful we could move to a mask optional practice for vaccinated individuals, but the recent recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics have added a layer of complexity. We'll keep everyone informed as circumstances continue to evolve. Meanwhile, we're hard at work preparing for the start of school, cleaning the buildings, and working on schedules and enhancements to our instructional program. With that, we have Mr. Toda here for 2 brief reports on the agenda. I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Mr. Alexis. Tonight, I'm going to share the local district special education public report for the 2019-2020 school year, and also the district and school grade report for the 2019-2020 school year. Both of these reports were just made available to the public. Going? Oh, I don't have access to share my screen. Aaron, can you help me with that?
All right, go ahead. You should be able to do that now. Thanks.
I can, thank you. There we go. So I'll start with the special education annual public reporting of local district performance. This report has 14 indicators. This report can be found on the Department of Education website and also on our district website. On the district website, it is under academic reports. I don't know if you all see me where I see you. Hold on. There we go. Indicator 1 doesn't apply to our district. It's graduation rates performance indicator. The data source is high school graduation reports that are collected August of 2019. Because we are not a high school district, we have an NA as our score or data for this indicator. The state target is that 81.5% of children with IEPs will graduate from high school with a regular diploma, though. Indicator 2 is dropout rates performance indicator. This information is collected at the end of the school year on the end of year report. We also have an NA for this indicator because, again, we're not a high school district, but the state does have a target of less than 6% of children with IEPs will drop out of high school. Indicator 3 is assessments performance indicator. For the 2019-20 school year, the state of New Jersey canceled all statewide student assessments for the 2020 testing window. So for indicator 3B, we have no state target and no data for participation of students with IEPs in assessments. And in indicator 3C, we have no state targets or data for the proficiency rate for children with IEPs on achievement standards. Indicator 4, suspension or expulsion performance indicator. This indicator asks, was the district identified by the state as having a significant discrepancy in the rates of suspensions and expulsions of children with IEPs for greater than 10 days in a school year? And our district was not. Indicator 4B, suspension or expulsion compliance indicator. This indicator asks, does the district have a significant discrepancy by race or ethnicity in the rate of suspensions and expulsions of greater than 10 days in a school year for children with IEPs, and the district does not? Does the district have policies, procedures, or practices that contribute to the significant discrepancy and do not comply with requirements relating to the development and implementation of IEPs, the use of positive behavioral interventions and supports, and procedural safeguards, and the district does not? Indicator 5 is looking at our school age least restrictive environment performance indicator. So for indicator 5A, the percent of children with IEPs aged 6 through 21 who participate in a general education class for 80% or more of the day. The state target is 50.5%, and the local data was 63.5%, which means that we met the state target. Indicator 5B, the percent of children with IEPs age 6 through 21 that participate in a regular education classroom less than 40% of the day. The state target was less than 14.0%, and our local data was 3.1%, so we met the state target. Indicator 5C, the percent of children with IEPs age 6 through 21 who participate in public or private separate schools, residential placements, or homebound or hospital placements. The state target is less than 6.9%, and our local data was 6.3%. So we did meet the state target. Indicator 6, preschool least restrictive environment performance indicator. This is giving us the percent of children aged 3 through 5 who have IEPs and who participate in the general education early childhood program. The state target is 46.0%. Our local data for 2019-20 was 63.6%. So we met the state target. And indicator 6B, the percent of children with children aged 3 through 5 with IEPs that attend a separate education class, a separate school or residential facility. The state target is less than 34%, and our local data was 27.3%. So we met the state target on indicator 6. Indicator 7 is looking at preschool outcomes performance indicator as indicated by the Child Outcome Survey. And for this, we have no state target and no local data. The reason for that, as indicated on our report from the state, is that we have a small sample size, so district level data can't be provided for this indicator. If we did have a larger sample size, indicator 7A is looking at growth in social emotional skills. Indicator 7B is looking at growth in academic and communication skills. And indicator 7C is looking at growth in behavior skills. Indicator 8 is looking at parent involvement, and that is also a performance indicator. For the 2019-2020 school year, our district was NIC, which stands for Not in Cohort. The state target was 86% of parents who reported that the schools facilitated parent involvement in an effort to improve services and results for children. In comparison, in 2018-19, our district was in the cohort. The target that year was also 86%, and the district had 74.5% for our local data. Indicator 9 is looking at disproportionality. Has the district been identified for disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in special education and related services that is the result of inappropriate identification? And we have not. In indicator 10, disproportionality compliance, has the district been identified with disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in specific disability categories that is the result of inappropriate identification? And we have not. Indicator 11, the effective general supervision, Part B, child find. This indicator looks at the percent of children who were evaluated within the state established timeline of receiving parental consent for initial evaluation, or if the state establishes a time frame within which the evaluation must be conducted within that time frame. The state target is and has been for a very long time 100%. Our local data for the 2019-2020 school year was a 78.9%. This would largely be attributed to us having the health-related school closure from March until June, which significantly delayed child study team evaluations and the timeline that the state requires. I could tell you in comparison, in 2018-19, the state target was also 100%, and our local data was 94.7%. Indicator 12, early childhood transition compliance indicator. This is the percent of children referred by Part C, or early intervention, prior to the age of 3, who are found eligible for Part B, preschool services, and who have an IEP developed and implemented by their 3rd birthdays. For 2019-2020, we have a 3 local data, which stands for 0 students were referred from Part C to Part B during that year. Indicator 13 is looking at secondary transitions. This would be the percent of students age 16 and older with an IEP that indicates appropriate measurable post-secondary goals that are annually updated. And we have an NA because we are not a high school district. Indicator 14 is looking at post-secondary transition outcomes. Again, we have an NA because we are not a high school district, but the state has targets for the percent of students with IEPs who enroll in higher education, the percent of students with IEPs who enroll in higher education or are competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school, and the percent of children with IEPs who are enrolled in higher education or in some other post-secondary education or training program, or who are employed within 1 year of leaving high school. Again, that local district special education public report is available on the Department of Education website, and it's also posted on our district website. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that before I continue?
I have a question. In terms of 504s, does the state do any measuring for students with 504s and their progress?
That's a good question. There is not a comparable report from the state for students with 504s.
Thank you.
Hi, Mrs. Dakota. I just wanted to thank you for giving the presentation this evening and for clarifying indicator 11. And I just had a question, even though we didn't meet that, and I understand it was because a lot of the COVID situations that were preventing us from doing that. Were all of the students eventually evaluated for that year?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking, Mrs. Harvey. All of the evaluations at any point in the evaluation process that was delayed because of our health-related school closure were all completely done and finalized, however that process ended for each individual student, but those were all completed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions about that report, then I will share again and move on to the district and school grade report. So this report can also be found on each of our school websites. This is the school self-assessment, district and school grade report. Each of our schools was asked to answer a series of questions on this self-assessment related to harassment, intimidation, and bullying programs, approaches, and initiatives, training on the board-approved HIB policy, staff instruction and training programs, curriculum and instruction on HIB and related information and skills, HIB personnel, school level HIB incident reporting procedures, HIB investigative procedures, HIB reporting, and that gave each school a grade. The maximum grade possible was a 78, and I can't say it's a straight average, but the district was given a grade based on the 2 school grades. In addition to the self-assessment, there were questions that needed to be answered and areas that needed to be reviewed. So one of those was implementation of the requirements found in the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. This led to, or this was noted by training for staff members, school personnel, and parents, formation of a school safety team, continuation of character education programs, and assemblies related to anti-bullying and character education. Progress has been made in addressing and improving harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and the school climate and culture. These are just a number of things that have been done in each of the schools. Individualized classroom lessons, school safety team, training for staff members, school personnel and parents, the district-wide week of respect, school safety patrol, school ambassadors, posters, signs, bulletin boards, individual counseling on an as-needed basis, and conflict resolution training for students. Areas that were identified as strengths were programming for students in terms of assemblies and activities related to character education and anti-bullying, lessons conducted by classroom teachers and the anti-bullying specialist, the school safety team, and an increased level of awareness and training for staff on signs of bullying and procedures for reporting. Areas that were noted for improvement included continued fostering of pro-social interactions between students and continued implementation of diversity training for students to increase sensitivity to others. Our schools plan to further assess strengths and vulnerabilities for learning by conducting school-wide climate surveys and pinpointing areas that require further training or intervention to foster a positive school climate. In order to promote a positive school climate, our school is teaching students social emotional learning skills by incorporating lessons, assemblies, small group instruction, implementing character counts at Bayberry and Second Step at Valley View, and providing various modes of communication to parents regarding academic, social, and emotional growth. This year, our school district and schools will be working towards and seeking everyone's involvement in improving students learning how to be upstanders, educating students in knowing the signs of bullying, including cyberbullying, emphasizing the importance of appropriate use of the internet regarding social media and ways to prevent cyberbullying, and continued education to parents on all aspects of bullying and the law. As I said, that HIB district grade report for 2019-20 is posted on each of the school websites under HIB and Code of Conduct all the way on the bottom. And since I have the screen, I'll share a little of how we've been spending our summer at ESY. In addition to our classroom instruction and related services, we've been fortunate to have related arts this summer. We have music, STEM, French, and Spanish. We also have a psychologist that's been working with our students and our staff on our school environments. The first week of ESY was Friendship Week, where students got to know each other and their likes and interests. Our Spirit Day was a wear your favorite color, and our students got to tally all of the results of everyone's favorite color, and then we shared it with our parents in our end of the week newsletter. This week was Mindfulness Week. So our students and our staff worked on skills and strategies for relaxing and remaining calm and staying focused. And up in the top corner, we have our friendship tree, where everyone got to get a little messy at ESY and put some handprints on that tree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toda. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay,
Thank
our
you.
principals will join us again at the August meeting. Our last couple of remarks just include thank you to the Watchung PBA for a $500 grant that's on the agenda. It will be used to fund our Early Act Club, which is a community service club at Bayberry. And I also want to thank the Borough Planning Board for conducting its courtesy review of the proposed storage building at Valley View so quickly. We appreciate it. And that will do it for this section of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alexis. We're going to move on to committee reports for human resources. Michelle, can you please give us an update?
Sure. On tonight's agenda, we have recommendations for new hires, which include art, math, and special education teachers for Valley View. The administration is also seeking the board's approval on a job description for the position of district substitute coordinator. The administration also notified the board that we have a young man who has raised his hand to volunteer in our district this summer and provide some extra hands for our custodial staff. So kudos to him for giving back this summer.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. Rich, can you give us the Operations Finance Committee report?
Sure. We had a meeting last Wednesday. So we first discussed the next steps with the potential referendum. We, as far as I think we're concerned, the last piece of the puzzle is what we're actually going to do with the Valley View field. As far as our recommendations as a committee is concerned, we had Brandon Steiner there, the CEO and owner of Steiner Sports Memorabilia, who has a lot of experience in this and actually helped design the Bayberry playground. And we batted around, no pun intended, a bunch of ideas. In fact, we didn't use a bat because that wasn't one of the recommendations. The committee was in favor of creating a multi-purpose grass field by removing the softball infield and removing all fencing. Mr. Walker will obtain the necessary templates for lining the field The committee also would like to include a lacrosse wall on the side of the multipurpose room. We were in favor of moving the basketball court and creating a half court with softer surface. And although we completely recognize the need to remain ADA compliant, we wanted the architects to consider other options for keeping the courtyard area free of spaces. Right now, the only cars that would be allowed would be for the handicap parking area. And we were wondering if there were any options to relocate that so it was fully compliant and fully respectful, but did not have motor vehicles coming into areas where children would be crossing and playing. The committee reviewed the preliminary eligible cost letters we got back from the state, which was quite a little bit surprising to us that we got them back so quickly. We got 2 of the 3 back. It indicated that the district is eligible for funding at the 40% level for the entire $7,675,000 in projects at Bayberry, and for $1,700,000, well, really $1,800,000 rounded up, of the $2,210,000 in educational adequacy costs at Valley View. We're waiting the 3rd letter, which is about Valley View, but not the educational enhancements. It's the HVAC, mechanical, electrical, etc. The only holdup on that was we had to get the approval. Well, we had to submit a courtesy application to the planning board, who were very gracious in turning it around quickly and approved it for the storage shed. That's just breaking news from today. Mr. Pepe reminded the committee that the state typically appropriates 85% of the eligible aid, which would result in a debt service aid equaling 34% of the eligible project costs. The PEC letter for the renovations at Valley View is pending their receipt and response from the planning board, which I said was just submitted. And we have until August 7th to respond if we wish to appeal any of the eligibility findings with respect to the first 2 letters, but we did not see a need to appeal that because we thought that their judgment was proper in all aspects of that. Basically, what they did not approve was the outdoor space at Valley View in the courtyard. Rich, is there anything else that they did not approve? Please remind me.
So in the letter that they sent us, that was the only thing, was the outdoor learning commons. We are anticipating a letter for the Valley View renovations that will also have additional ineligible based on the information provided by DRG. We're anticipating that the concrete sidewalk work, the storage building, and the repurposing of the softball fields will not be eligible, but everything else on the list will be.
Thank you. The committee discussed the return to in-person board meetings, and in accordance with advice from the board council, the committee is in favor of holding hybrid meetings at least through the summer, and then reevaluate it at the beginning of the school year. And as you know, Mr. Pepe and Mr. Alexis are present there in person. We'll continue to do that. The committee was also in favor of requiring masks for anyone who is not vaccinated. These are still, considerations that, as Mr. Alexis said earlier in the meeting, will evolve, and we will come up with final recommendations in the coming meetings. Mr. Pepe informed that the committee that the funds for the security grant were appropriated by the state and the non-compliance projects could now begin. The district is using the funds to upgrade access controls at both schools and the main office security camera at Valley View. I did ask if this was in addition to what was in the proposed referendum projects, and the answer was yes. Mr. Pepe informed the committee that the district will be receiving $612,805 in extraordinary aid. This is over $200,000 more than we anticipated when we submitted the application, and over $450,000 more than was included in the FY22 budget. On emergency connectivity fund, based on the survey sent out in early July, Mr. Pepe recommended the board approve our E-rate consultant to submit an application for ECF reimbursement. The survey results showed that we may be eligible for 100% reimbursement for up to 66 Chromebooks. The committee discussed the future of food service in the district. The committee asked Mr. Alexis and Mr. Pepe to look into options for providing lunch to students. Concerns were raised about the PTO food sales not being available every day, needing to be ordered far in advance, not having extra meals on hand for students who forgot their lunches, and whether or not financial assistance is available to those in need. We understand that there was a lot of discussion about this. There are a lot of challenges to providing a school lunch program. So that is something that is certainly still subject to much further investigation and discussion. Mr. Pepe explained that the incident IQ technology is a system that will support ticket management, inventory management, and control and fixed asset record keeping. The committee was in favor of approving the purchase of this SaaS tool, software tool. We asked Mr. Walker about the indoor air quality, just reminding him and the administration, who weren't here back then, that we had a mold problem as we entered as new board members, at least 3 of us 3 years ago. That cost the school $400,000. That was not anticipated. And he said that he had put in place for the summer practices that would address concerns about the potential for another mold incident, and the district is taking steps to avoid this issue. We talked about the rain garden at Bayberry. Mr. Pepe informed the committee that the rain garden project funded by a Rutgers University grant is underway. The construction phase is complete and planting is scheduled for the week of 7/19. I know that some board members had a question about the location of the rain garden. I will defer to Mr. Pepe, who had spoken with some of the folks at Rutgers as to the location.
Sure. Did you want me to talk about that now or when you finish?
Sure.
Yeah, so the question was because the rain garden was installed at the top of a hill, which seemed counterintuitive to some. We looked at it, and the reason it was put there is it's right where there had been drains in the parking lot. So what they did was they opened up the curb from where the drains are, so the water coming off the parking lot will go directly in there, and it will absorb it rather than have it run down the hill. That was the thinking behind that location.
Thank you, Mr. Pepe. And finally, we discussed the shared services agreement with the town. Questions were raised regarding the removal of certain Phillips Field maintenance items, including the maintenance of the bleachers and the lavatories in the food shack. The committee asked Mr. Pepe to follow up with Mr. D'Amato to get clarification on those issues and obtain a copy of the previous written agreement between the borough and the Watchung Little League. It turns out that there is nothing formally in place since, I think, 1989, Rich. And the recommendation, I think, and sorry for the rest of the committee, I haven't had a chance to to discuss this as a committee yet, but I think the recommendation was to memorialize this in writing in some fashion, either through a separate written agreement like they had done in decades past, or perhaps through the permit. That's it for the operations committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Michelle, can you please give the curriculum committee update?
Sure. So in continuing talks regarding the Valley View schedule, Principal Kidd provided an update on the status for development for the schedule for the upcoming school year. The schedule will be similar to the high school with 55-minute periods, keeping the form of a rotating model, modified block schedule, excuse me. As a result from community feedback, she's also looking at ways to increase instructional time for math, possibly with the element of the flex period concept. Speaking of math, the committee discussed placement criteria and recommendations for the subject at Valley View, with the goal to have more students complete Algebra 1 prior to high school. The committee would like to encourage parents to pay close attention to their emails for important updates from Mrs. Kidd on this matter. Our 2 summer programs are garnering good feedback. At Bayberry, Pursuit of Excellence classes are small and giving students more individual and hands-on attention. Over at Valley View, students are split into half virtual, half in-person instruction. And given family summer schedule, the administration has been very flexible, allowing students to move between remote and in-person instruction, which is allowed for continuing learning over the summer. Looking ahead, the committee discussed having earlier registration for summer 2022, as well as the possibility of forming some sort of camp for student enrichment. With our ESY program, students have been given the addition, as Mrs. Ditota said, of related arts experiences, exposing them to art, music, and world languages. The psychologist is on site every day and sharing social and emotional learning strategies. There was a discussion regarding the use of iReady as data to guide instruction, and then possible need for more training to maximize the use of data to advance student learning. However, we are still waiting for the data from both national and state level. So without this comparison, we'll need to continue to discuss. If you have any questions on this, please email Jen with any questions. And finally, the committee discussed the ongoings over at the high school and their discussions about calendar changes. We thought it was a good idea to keep a very close eye on what those decisions were, how they may impact Watchung Borough families, and strategies we may want to implement to weigh those changes in our district.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Joe, can you please give us the policy committee update?
Sure. So briefly, we met on Monday, the 19th. As mentioned in the last board meeting, one of the objectives for the meeting was to go through existing policies and regulations that pertain to technology at the school district in light of the operations committee meetings and our coordination with outside vendor for cybersecurity. The purpose of the review of these policies and regulations was to determine if any of them required amending in order or enhancement in order to align it with the upcoming reviews and recommendations by the cybersecurity vendor. Luckily, in going through the policies and regulations, they were sufficiently general enough to provide latitude for what we need in the district in terms of any additional safeguards or controls that need to be put in place. So there's nothing within the policies or regulations that would be contradictory to what may be suggested from a process perspective by the external vendor. For that reason, you will not see any of those policies or regulations on the agenda tonight because there's nothing to update. Subsequently, we also reviewed certain mandatory policies and regulations that had really non-substantive changes. These were minor modifications, but nevertheless, and almost all administrative in nature. Nevertheless, we need to make those updates for purposes of having these policies and regulations in compliance with the most updated state requirements. So that was the bulk of the meeting this past Monday.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. Board liaison reports. Rich, is there anything for the legislative liaison?
No updates this month.
Okay, Adam, or I think Amber's not on anymore. So Adam, is there anything under community engagement?
Nothing from me.
Okay, Kevin, anything for Somerset County Educational Services Commission?
No updates for this meeting.
Okay, Jessica, anything from Somerset County School Boards Association?
No.
And Amber's not here, so we'll move on to community engagement. Is there any update from Mrs. Ruperto Ferrara from the PTO? I apologize if I said your name wrong. Or if anybody's on here from the PTO who would like to give an update. So I don't think I see her on here. Nope. Okay. For WEF, Mrs. Kokiata, is there any WEF update? Ms. Newsome, is there anything from the CPAG for an update, or anyone from the CPAG? And Ms. Williams, is there anything for the Watchung idea update? Okay, seeing no updates, we're going to move to comments from the public on agenda items. We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for public comment is towards the end of the meeting. Total time allotted for the public comment is 30 minutes. Before you make your comment, please state your name and address. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 3 minutes duration. Comments submitted to the board secretary prior to the meeting will be read first. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather are offered as opportunities to share input with the board. In instances where the board feels a response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comment. New Jersey statutes do not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring in public session. Names of students should not be used. Mr. Pepe, will you please read the statement to the recording of this meeting?
Members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally, legally responsible with potential liability for comments that they make to the board. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by members of the public.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So we're going to move on to action items. Adam, can you please move administrative items?
I sure can. I'd like to move administrative items A1, approve minutes of previous meetings, A2, approve settlement agreement, and A3, approve final payment of accumulated benefits.
Is there a second?
Second.
A discussion? Okay, let's go into a roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Beccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Murad, I believe she's not on. Mrs. Posehn,
Yes.
and Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
and Mrs. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion's pass.
Okay. Michelle, can you please move personnel items?
Move the following items. B1, appoint art teacher for Valley View School. B2, appoint special education teacher for Valley View School. B3, appoint math teacher for Valley View School. B4, change of assignment over at Bayberry School. B5, approve district substitute coordinator job description.
Is there a second?
Second, Adam.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Beccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Posehn,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf, did we lose Mrs. Scharf? We'll come back. Mrs. Harvey?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yes.
Scharf. Mrs. Harvey?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, motion's passed.
Okay, Rich, will you please move operation items?
Yes, I move C1, approve payment of bills, C2, approve transfer of funds, C3, accept financial reports, C4, approve ECF filing service agreement, C5, authorize the application, submission and acceptance of allocations for Elementary and Secondary Education Act, C6, approve property and casualty insurance renewal. C7, approve service providers. C8, accept donation from the Watchung PBA. C9, approve the contract with Atlantic Tomorrow Office for copy machines. And C10, approve transportation services agreement with Somerset County Educational Services Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Beccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
Yes, with gratitude to the PBA for the grant.
Mr. Kraft,
Abstain from C9 and yes to the rest.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Posehn,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
Okay, Joe, can you please move policy items?
Sure. Move E1, approve policy and regulation for first reading. E2, abolish policy for first reading.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barbella,
Yes.
Mr. Beccarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingracia,
yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Posehn,
Yes.
Mrs. Scharf,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
Is there any board business to discuss?
I should have, I forgot, or I didn't realize someone wasn't going to be on from PTO, but Food Truck Fridays tomorrow. Come out. come out wherever you are, and give a shout out for the Watchung Farmers Market every Tuesday, police parking lot. Good times for all. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And then we're going to move into comments from the public. Please remember to state your name and address before speaking. I don't see any hands raised, but I don't know, Rich, if you guys see anything on your end.
No, I just ran out in the hallway to make sure that there wasn't anyone waiting.
Okay, great.
So no.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second, Jen.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you for joining us this evening. This meeting is adjourned.